Okay, here
This
we go.
meeting is being recorded.
Hey, Rebecca.
Hi, Christina.
Good to see you.
Likewise.
So today, let's talk about boundaries, right? Lovely subject.
Oh my goodness, boundaries. And like we were just, oh God, just discussing all these there. Where do we start?
Boundaries is, in terms of boundaries leading, or the lack of boundaries leading to toxic relationships. Not having boundaries.
Yeah, like we can start with the fact that we've talked about childhood trauma in the past, and that's where it all starts.
That's where it starts. I was just about to pick up on that. And in terms of childhood trauma and the environment we grow up in, if you're not taught boundaries, then you won't be able to set them. And if you don't set them, you'll not feel empowered, and you won't teach people how you like to be treated, right? So boundaries are essentially usually what happens when I set boundaries is that people take it really personally, or they get really defensive, or they get really offended. So that's a signal that they don't understand boundaries. And I think it's not a lot of people don't understand boundaries. It's a bit of a tough one. So what has your experience been? I grew up with a lack of boundaries completely all over.
And I think that's really important also for us single moms, because we're moms, right? And like, what are we teaching our children? We teach them what we know, what we learned, right? So when I think of boundaries, I think of where did my childhood go to that route of how did my childhood teach me that boundaries, that I couldn't have boundaries? Like, what was it about my childhood? Because everyone has different experiences for why they don't have boundaries as an adult. So in my own childhood, there was a lack of respect from parents and siblings, and in that aspect, it was more of, I didn't have a voice. So even if I spoke up about things that I was unhappy about, I was shut down immediately. And I had no privacy in many cases. Like, whenever I tried to keep something that was like on my own, and it's not like I was trying to hide anything, but it was more of a deliberate going into my personal things and exposing my things or throwing my things away that made me feel so violated, and that I didn't have any rights to privacy or space. So over time, when this becomes the normal, whether it's coming from your siblings, or whether it's coming from your parents, or whether it's coming from wherever in your life as a child, then this starts transpiring in your relationships when you're older. So for example, we were talking about toxic relationships. That the relationship is toxic once the person starts violating your boundaries, and you just kind of let it happen. You just, okay, but you start making excuses and justifying their behavior because of maybe their childhood, or they're having a bad day, because you were trained to kind of think this way since childhood. Is that kind of shared? Do you share that experience?
I do share that experience, and it reminds me of codependency. And codependency is something that happens when our feelings have not been validated. Like you said, I didn't have a voice, I wasn't heard, and I felt like it was not okay to be who I am, and it was not okay to have my feelings. So when a child experiences that, then they learn to people please, overcompensate, put others' needs ahead of their own. And some people misconstrue that as love. It's not love. It's take care of yourself first in order to be able to take care of others. Now, thinking about yourself all the time first may be selfish, but putting yourself first in your needs is not selfish. It's actually boundaries. I think I read this somewhere, is an act of love, right? Because it means I respect myself enough to respect you. And I've had to learn that. So when we grow up in a toxic kind of family environment, it's like we're called to relearn stuff, right? And reprogram. I'm sure you've had a similar experience, and we have to kind of relearn how to do it right and heal so we can have a better experience for ourselves and in all our relationships, not just romantic relationships, right? Like a lot of my friendships have been toxic.
Oh yeah,
A
yeah.
lot
And
of my
that's a
friendships,
good point, because I've said this in the past that if you've had a cycle of bad relationships, like romantic relationship, it is very likely that your friendships and your family relationships are also a level of toxic. They're
yes,
also a level of toxic, whether they're very toxic or slightly toxic or multiple people toxic in different ways. But there is a high likelihood of toxicity in all of your other relationships as well.
absolutely, absolutely. And I remember I was talking to back then my therapist, and I'm like, this friend of mine, this girlfriend of mine, is so selfish. And she turns around and she's like, yes, but you're so codependent.
Mm,
So I was able to take a step back, and that helped me realize that I need to look at myself, and not kind of deflect and make it, oh, it's the other person's problem. And
right.
that actually is quite self-empowering, to be able to look at ourselves and, create self-awareness and start setting the boundaries. It's been very, very difficult to verbalize, because what the fear is, and I've spoken to a lot of women, is if I say this, what if I get rejected? What
I
if
was
they
going to
don't
say
accept
that
it?
it's funny because you mentioned fear, and like I was formulating this thought as you were speaking of, like, the reason why in our relationships, whether it's romantic or with friends or even with family, the reason why we continue these toxic relationships and we lack boundaries is because there's a fear that if I speak up, they will reject me. If I speak up, they may get mad at me. If I speak up, they may not want me. But the idea that I like, the most empowering thing that came to my mind and to my life is when I realized that if they reject you because you stand up for yourself, then they're not the right people for
I
you.
know what you're going to say, exactly.
They don't deserve you. You need to cut them out. And then there's an idea that comes to your mind, like to kind of counteract that one. But if I cut them out, then I'll be alone. No, you
Yes.
won't. You'll find people like you that will love you and respect you. And that is the most empowering thought and reality, that there are people out there that are willing to love and respect you for who you are.
Yes.
And when you realize that,
Amen.
there are people out there that are willing to love and respect you for who you are, will you be holding on to those toxic relationships so tightly? Or would you be more willing to cut them?
That's a hard no. It would be if everyone believed that, or knew that, if they knew that as a fact, if someone came to you, like, I don't know, a figure of authority, and said, there's a perfect person out there for you, they would never accept it. And it's always coming from this place of fear and lack, that I will never find a person that has these qualities, and I will be alone. I will never find that again, and I will be alone. So we kind of, perpetually stay in these cycles and choose like the same thing over and over
But
again.
can I tell you what is a true fact?
Yeah.
That thought is a fat lie. That's a fact. And we were talking last week about the law of attraction, right?
Right.
And how we attract people into our lives based on our state, like on who we believe we are, like who we deserve. People that come to your life, and we attract everything, good people, bad people, but the people that stay in your lives are the people that feed off of your energy. So if you have no boundaries, then you have this fear, then you will be more prone to accept people into your life that are going to violate those boundaries, because that's your normal. That's what you've been programmed since childhood. And the good people that come to your life and have a kind of like a character, they have boundaries. You'll be like, that person is kind of like you won't be attracted to them. So you will stay away. So that's how the law of attraction really, really works. So those people, the good people, are everywhere. But the reason why you're not attracting them is because you can't see them, because you're focused on the lack. You're focused on, oh, well, if I cut this relationship, then I'm not going to find something better. But if you start focusing on your worth, on yourself, would be like, hold on, I am worth more. And my worth is not based on my past or on my childhood or on my past relationships or my past mistakes. My worth is based on who I am as a whole, as a spiritual, perfect being, and where I'm going, what my purpose is. And once you realize that you're a diamond, and that you are being processed in a way that maybe, it depends on where you are in your process as a diamond, or you're a butterfly, you're in your cocoon. Yeah. Like there's different ways of seeing this metaphor, right? But you are a beautiful creature, and where you are going, where you are meant to be, is to shine that beauty. And so, once you start shifting your focus into that identity of yourself, you will you will not tolerate the BS from people that are crossing your boundaries. And you will be more attracted to people who will love and respect you for who you are.
I absolutely agree. I just want to add to that I really liked what you said, where you are in your process of becoming a diamond, because it is a process. And I think that life is ultimately a learning experience and a growth experience, and we're meant to be evolving. And when we're not growing, it's kind of like our souls are dying. So do we ever reach that complete perfection? No. But it's about always growing, always stepping up to that next level, kind of like the computer game where you're stepping up to that next level. And I just wanted to ask you, so how do you think having a consistent lack of boundaries turns into toxic? What does that toxic look like?
So I can say it in so many different ways. So I'm going to identify it in toxic relationships with family, friends, and romantic relationships. So toxic relationships in family, it's when you tolerate criticism. When people just criticize you, they give you backhanded compliments, they put you down, or they are just negative and they fill you with just negativity. All they talk about is negative. They talk about so and so and so and so, and why don't you do this for me? And making you feel guilty and making you feel shame for the progress that you're doing in life. Cut it off. Mother, father, sister, brother, cousins, it's a painful process to cut people out of your life that you love. You don't have to cut them off 100%. You can limit contacts. For me, it depends. It depends on how toxic and the effect that they have on your life. If they are so toxic that every time they talk to you, it brings you down, then don't talk to them at all. Block them. But if you can avoid them and see them here and there, and you kind of expect already that when you see them, they're going to say something toxic that you're just going to put like this shield and kind of ignore, and then you won't see them again for a while, then limit contact with them. You don't have to block them completely. Everybody's at their own level, right? When it comes to friendships, friends that don't respect your time, don't respect your property, like they'll take things and that are yours, or they take your time, or they demand things from you but are not willing to give the same level. Like they'll take your space, they'll ask you for favors, but then if you ask them for a favor, then they're not available, or they give you a favor expecting another favor in return, like, but in a bad way. They'll throw it at your face if you don't, like, and it's like it's you would know if your relationship is toxic, because you won't feel like it's healthy. Like if you tell them, also a toxic friendship is if they violate your boundary and you tell them what you did was hurtful,
and they continue to do it,
and they either continue to do it, or they how do you say, like they what is the right word? All the languages are going through my head. They like they did this. Validate is not a word. Invalidate. They invalidate what you're saying. They invalidate what you're saying to justify themselves, or they put you down for it, or they like make excuses and they never accept that what they did was wrong. Like that is a toxic relationship right there, a toxic friend. Because I guarantee you that if they were to tell you what you did was hurtful to me, you would say, I'm so sorry, I would never do this again, right?
Yes, and that's a healthy response. Responding and affirming someone's feelings and say, oh yeah, I'm so sorry, I didn't do it on purpose. And also change. So yes, even if they apologize and they don't take action to change, it's not essentially an apology, right?
Exactly. So if you don't have those healthy patterns, or if you see those unhealthy patterns, then those friends are not for you, even if they do good things for you. Oh, but they gave me a ride when they watched my kids when I needed it. Then you know that those are transactional relationships, and you need to keep your boundaries, and you compartmentalize those relationships as purely transactional, because sometimes we do need transactional relationships as well. But don't allow them into your heart, into the crevices of your heart, so that they hurt your feelings or they cross your boundaries and you just allow this stuff. Like, don't. And then when it comes to relationships, like romantic relationships, I mean, as soon as the person disrespects you or puts you down, or as soon as they, okay, so everybody has their moments, right? Everybody has their moments where they react in a way that maybe is unnatural to them. They may be having a bad day or whatever. But if you tell them that what they did hurt you, and they don't, again, like we were saying before, they don't acknowledge that, they put up defenses, or they get mad at you for feeling hurt, and ultimately is your fault, that is an absolute toxic relationship. They have crossed your boundaries because they have not respected your feelings. They have not acknowledged your feelings.
Yes, I agree. Absolutely. Absolutely. And another thing that comes to mind is, of course, this is a given, right? So any physical abuse, verbal abuse, mental and emotional abuse, I think for a lot of us, it's a little bit harder to detect. We don't know what emotional abuse can look like. And if your partner is not taking accountability for their side, then ultimately that could also potentially lead to a toxic relationship, because there needs to be some form of like collaboration, right? Collaboration, essentially a partnership. A relationship is a partnership, and in order to have a partnership, both people need to be accountable for their side. And relationships are actually not 50-50. They're 100 and 100.
Exactly.
I take 100% responsibility for my side. That's not easy, right? To reach that level of, I don't know, healing or awareness or consciousness. And the other person takes 100% responsibility for their side. So there's none of that. You made me feel like that. You said that, and you know, it's always you. Right. So no, it's, I have my own feelings, and I am responsible for my feelings. So yeah, that's essentially a big lesson for, you know, partnership and relationships.
Absolutely. And I think that, I mean, there's a lot to unpack in what you just said. Like there's, you know, I guess the angle that I can go with that is that when you're in this kind of relationship and you've had a history of toxic relationships, and you have a history of trauma, and these toxic relationships become your normal. I know that through my healing process, I had a point in my life where I was just thinking like, I don't know how to be in a healthy relationship because all of my relationships have been unhealthy. And one thing that my therapist said to me was like, no, you do know how to be in a healthy relationship because you have all of the qualities and the knowledge and the intuition of what a healthy relationship needs, like what you need out of a healthy relationship. You've just been making choices where you are allowing people to violate your boundaries so that you're finding yourself in these unhealthy relationships. So it's not that you don't know. You can't invalidate your knowledge or your ability to be in a healthy relationships. You do. You know what you need and you know what is good to give. Like it has to be, like you said, 100. Like you have to be with somebody that, not that they're perfect. And that was the other angle that I was going to go with. You're not expecting somebody that is 100% perfect, but you just want someone that, that is willing to accept that they're not 100% perfect, but is willing to work with you on becoming a better version of themselves. If you're with somebody that has no personal growth while you are healing and you're still growing and you're learning yourself and you're doing all this self-development, then that relationship will not be healthy because that person will never acknowledge their own need to grow. They will never self-reflect. They would never realize like, oh shoot, like I made a mistake. I said my behavior is hurtful to the love of my life. And I love her and I don't want to hurt her. So I'm going to adjust my behavior and work on it. And it's a work in progress. It's not, sometimes if it's overnight, wonderful. The idea is that the person is willing to work on it. Like I'm not going to change. If I have a bad habit that I've had since childhood, because we're riddled, especially the older we get and the history of all these relationships, we have a history of bad habits that we've accumulated. It's called baggage, right? Now, if I have some of my baggage and then my partner says, you got some baggage that it has to go. Like, this disrespect, it's not okay to talk to each other this way. It's not okay to do this, or you shouldn't be, texting other men in this way, or whatever it is, whatever the baggage is, the behaviors that were okay for you in the past, and they're not okay now. Now, you got to be careful that the behaviors are not controlling. Like, oh, well, you can't be texting. You can't. It has to be healthy. Like it's a mutual thing. It's a healthy respect where both people feel loved and respected. And that looks different in many different relationships, obviously.
Absolutely. And I really like what you said about it. Are they willing to work on it? Right.
Yeah.
Because everyone has flaws. Are they willing to work on it? And I think there's a light at the end of the tunnel if they're willing to work on themselves.
And you're willing to, you're willing, okay, you may be an asshole today, but at least you acknowledge you're an asshole and you're willing to work on it and become a sweetheart. And because you're that, like, if you have instances of being an asshole and I can call you out on it and you could really understand that that's not okay and you can take all the necessary actions to be better, then we'll work on this together. Like we will be in this together and nobody's perfect, but we're perfecting each other as we go along, right?
We're perfecting each other as we go along, yes. And in terms of boundaries, another thing that comes up, it reminds me of years ago when, we can use the term boundaries, but I didn't know what a boundary was or what it looked like. So yes. I had to relearn that. And I think a lot of people have that as well. They don't know what a boundary looks like, a personal boundary. I didn't know what I wanted.
I agree.
And I was a yes person. Do you want to do this? Okay. Have you seen the movie Runaway Bride?
Yes.
With Julia Roberts? That's just came to my mind, where the reporter Richard Gere was doing an article on her, and he's like, you like everything your boyfriend's like. You like the eggs that he likes, and when you change, you like what he likes. That reminds me of me. Like I used to change identities with each person that I was with. So if my guy likes soccer, I was a super soccer fan, right? And I was a yes person. I just said yes to everything, and that reminds me of being a doormat kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I needed to really, you need to know yourself,
Yeah.
like down to the basics. What is okay for me? And what you said before, that little feeling, that instinct,
Yeah.
that's when you know something doesn't feel right. And another indication that someone's violating your boundary is anger. If you
Right.
feel angry about something, they're doing something that's not okay with you,
Yeah.
right?
And it needs to be discussed. And it's not something that you just keep in and be like, well, he violated my boundary. I'm bouncing, like I'm done. I'm cutting this toxic relationship. No, he may not know that he's doing
Yes.
something wrong, just like you may do bad things that he thinks is bad and you may not know. It takes conversation, it takes acknowledgement. And if he behaves a certain way that you don't like, and you have the freedom to speak to him, and he's not going to react in a way that's negative, because if he reacts negatively to you pointing something out in a respectful and loving way, then that is a red flag, you know. Because likewise, if he's telling you, look, I have these needs and I'm not feeling like those needs are being met, and you can have a conversation about it, you don't have to fully meet those needs, but you could tell him, like, this is how I feel about that. And let's meet 50-50. Like, let's meet halfway, you know, because I'm not going to completely lose my own identity to make you feel happy. And I'm not expecting you to lose your own identity to make me feel happy, but we can compromise. And that is what a healthy relationship does. And it takes conversation and it takes commitment, but it takes love and understanding and communication. And if the person's unwilling to compromise because they are who they are, this is it, I am this way, I'm never going to change, that is a red flag. You need to turn around and run away. And that's hard, because when the person meets all of your other needs, then it's like, well, do I tolerate his bullshit? Just, excuse me, his bull. Do I tolerate his bull just because he meets like 70% of my needs? No, because out there is somebody that will meet 100% of your needs if you believe that that exists for you. And because it does whether you believe it or not. And the way I always say it, if I exist, then that person exists for me, because I am somebody that's more than willing to compromise and to give and to be understanding and to communicate. So this is where I was saying before that my therapist was saying, yes, you know how to be in a healthy relationship because you know how to communicate, you know what feels right, you know what doesn't feel right, and you're just learning yourself, you're learning what your boundaries are. And yes, like, you don't know what your boundaries are, because if they've been violated since childhood and you've been taught to not have any, then it's a learning process. But this is when you need somebody that's understanding by your side, somebody that can know your history and can know that they need a little extra patience and extra guidance and communication with you to help you. And with that, you surround yourself with positive, healthy people, or get a therapist that can help you. You know, that's very, very important, because or a coach, exactly, a relationship coach, or a financial coach, whatever helps you with. And we haven't even spoken about boundaries and finances, a whole other topic.
Boundaries and money.
Exactly, that's a whole other topic. But with regards to relationships,
yeah,
you know, you need that help. Like, if all this time you've been repeating the same cycle again and again, Einstein said that a crazy person is somebody that repeats or the definition of insanity is repeating the same thing again and again and expecting different results. So obviously you need help. So get help, learn, put yourself out there, take the time to read, to learn, to get a coach, to get a therapist, and learn how to get to know yourself and what your boundaries are. Create those for yourself if they don't exist, or if they exist, but if you're not aware of what they are.
Amen. Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. Great stuff. Great stuff on boundaries.
It's awesome. And always, I love talking with you, speaking with you about all of these topics. Christina, you're pretty awesome.
You're pretty awesome too. I really enjoy it, and I love the topics that we talk about. And I think it's really helpful for people to, watch and listen to and learn about boundaries, because I think we I think as people, we're more similar than different.
Yes.
I believe that to be true. We're more similar than different. And we've all had these similar experiences from childhood and romantic relationships. But ultimately, our experience of childhood does program us for the quality of relationships that we have, friends and romantic partners. I think it's a little, I don't know, I think it's a little bit too more close to the heart when it comes to romantic, because it's so intimate. You're so kind of vulnerable and open to the other person, kind of like naked. It's like, it's just really hard and really hurtful sometimes, when you have to kind of let that go. But as we said, it's learning.
I agree. And I think that the reason why relationships, romantic relationships are that way is because whether we acknowledge it or not, they hit a part of our childhood need to be, there has to be some connection with our childhood needs and a romantic relationship that needs to be nurtured, that needs to be protected. That'll stem from your childhood, and a romantic relationship is meant to meet those needs. And that's why, when you open up your heart in that vulnerability, then those childhood wounds come up in a relationship, which is what the baggage is. So if you have trauma stemming from childhood that's never been healed, or if you're codependent, that's coming from a childhood need to be nurtured and loved, or a childhood because you were rejected, or because of whatever happened in childhood, and then this relationship is meeting these needs, but it's not meeting other needs, and it's a whole, I think that they are very, very related. So if your relationship is not working for whatever reason, I would suggest that you really look at that inner childhood experience. Like, look at that, your childhood experience, your inner child, do some inner child healing, do some research, get a coach, get a therapist, do some reading. There's a lot of information out there to get to know yourself, because and like you said it before, it's a process and we're all through it. And I really enjoy the fact that we're in this together right now, and that we can help each other out.
Me too. It's fantastic. It's great. So great to talk to you today.
Likewise. And until next time.
Until next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.